Hello, everyone. Welcome to the RightOffTrack podcast, where we explore the extraordinary journeys of individuals who have dared to venture off the beaten path and who created their own version of success. Today, I'm excited to have Matt Doan as our special guest. With a background as a workaholic management consultant, Matt knows firsthand the pitfalls and limitations of the corporate world. However, he refused to let himself be trapped by the corporate cage. Instead, he embarked on a deeply personal mission to help others break free and live a life of true freedom. Drawing from his own experiences, Matt has become obsessed with helping people live uncaged. Through his coaching, courses, and content, he empowers individuals to stop the bleeding, start dreaming, to design their freedom blueprint, and activate their plans to reclaim control over their careers and lives. Join us in this captivating episode as we dive deep into Matt's personal story, explore the keys to escaping the corporate cage, and discover how to create your own path to freedom. Welcome to the podcast, Matt.
Thanks for having me, Anya. This is going to be a wonderful conversation.
I'm excited. I'm really excited to learn from you, and I deeply resonate with the message that you have. It definitely resonates with my own personal and professional journey, but I would love to hear for myself and for the audience, how did you get here?
Yeah, quite the journey here. So I'll hit it in a few snippets. Let's rewind to start here. So grew up in a very conservative religious household, military, where it said basically, go find a safe path, go find a logical place, get into a good school, pick a good path out of that, find a sensible job. It's a very similar conversation and storyline like other millennials like myself could probably just adhere to, like, yeah, that's what was programmed into us. So we did it. So came out of school and found myself in technology consulting. It was a good time to be in that realm after the .com bubble burst had cleared and things were good again. Technology was hot. So got into consulting, was finding my groove there. It was challenging at the beginning, but I started latching onto things and getting promoted and finding ways to add value. And I felt like, all right, this is something where I can dig in and be valuable. At the same time, on a personal side, Anya, I got married very young and had 3 kids by the time I was 28. So this personal life was growing quickly, bought a home. You could see like the American dream formulating very quickly. Yes, checking boxes, check, 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 check. And people, of course, are reinforcing this to me saying, Matt, you're so good at this. You're living the dream. Look at the great life you're building. And of course, I'm like beating my chest, like, yeah, I'm doing it well. And I don't know anything else. Like, this feels like success. And I look around maybe other people at work who are the only other people I know, because I don't have time for friends with a large family and traveling as a consultant and all this. And they seem to be doing what I'm doing, just a few years ahead. So keep going, keep going. At about the 10-year mark, things got very difficult for me. I was climbing, succeeding, but then it started feeling empty and other things in my life started falling apart. I remember being in a hotel room in Munich one night and I realized that I was missing my young son's birthday party and it just crushed me. I remember falling to the floor saying, what the hell am I doing? I didn't really even need to take this trip. Why am I here? I started questioning these things and like it was a slow boil of asking myself, am I on a good path? Am I not? Then over the next year, my dad got brain cancer. He passed away. So I feel this mortality thing. Ended up getting divorced. That in turn helped cause me to lose access to my kids a great deal of the time. My mental health went down the tank. I was on meds, just trying to make it through, dropped like 40 pounds. I was a shell of myself. And there was a moment then when I realized if I'm going to keep going, I need to step out of this corporate grind. It wasn't the only thing that had taken my life down, but it was a huge factor. And I had said yes to it for all those years. I look back and call that the corporate cage because I was saying yes to being in that cage. I'll pause there, see if you have any questions or thoughts.
Honestly, it sounds shitty.
Yeah, good word for it.
And it makes me think that is the track so many of us follow because we think that's what keeps us safe. And we feel like that's what's expected of us and the right path. And feel free to go wherever you want. But why do you think that path is not serving us? Well, everybody's like, that's what you should do. You're so successful. You're doing exactly what you should be happy. Why in fact, did that not make you happy?
I learned about this idea called mimetic desire. The long and short of it is that we adopt the wants of other people. So we
Hmm.
look around us from a very early age. Psychologists would say that your mind starts getting very deeply conditioned at around age 10. Up until about age 10, we want what we want. Like I wanted to be a Major League Baseball player, and that's the only thing I cared about. And then at 10, you start getting these other influences. You enter puberty, and you're like, okay, like I have to start listening to other forces. Then you have to get good grades in high school so that you can get into a good college, and so on and so on. It just carries forward. And the whole idea of mimetic desire is you absorbing like a magnet all of the wants and desires of other people, other definitions of success. And of course, you don't know this is happening. You think it's free will, you think it's choice, but it's not. And only did I, after spending all that time pursuing other people's dreams, American Dream Checklist, right? Did I realize, oh my God, I found no fulfillment in this. This did not lead me to a place where I like who I am. I'm not a good father. I'm not a healthy person. I don't feel like I'm creating value for those I'm meant to serve in this world. This is not working. And it had to go through this unwinding of, like erasing all those check marks. I didn't need this. I didn't need this. I didn't need this. And then you have to go through, well, what do I want? And that's an everlasting experiment. It's every day I come back to with pen and paper in my journal. What do I want? What do I want? And it sharpens, and every now and then it takes a little right-hand turn, but it's become much more clear to go inside and understand what I truly want. And I get inspired by other people, of course, that I deem my heroes now, rather than just people who I worked around.
And if I could add, my reflection on it is that I feel like this checkbox really serves making money for big industries. Because if you tell people, well, you're unhappy, then buy something. Or if you're unhappy, you just need more money. That's your answer. And it doesn't serve us on a personal, purposeful level, but it does make good money for other people. But you, as I see you now, are in a much different place. So could you tell us a little bit about the journey that you took from the low point to where you are now and what you learned along the way?
Indeed, indeed. So call that first decade in corporate. I call that being in the corporate cage. That was my time in the cage. All the while, I didn't realize that the door was wide open and I just had to step out. Well, what does that mean? Well, over the next 5 years, so I had a large family, newly divorced, tons of financial responsibilities. Usually, when the dad exits the household, often gets the brunt of the financial responsibilities. And it was a heavy weight. And I couldn't just say, like, oh, goodbye, corporate, goodbye, lucrative paycheck. I had a ton of responsibilities and I couldn't disrupt life too much. It was already violently disrupted at that point. So I had to learn to do the job, but on my terms, so that I could be the person I wanted to be, to create the lifestyle I wanted, to be the dad I knew I needed and wanted to be. And I needed the paycheck. I didn't love the work anymore. That's when I started not loving the work. It was an interesting time. But I saw it more as an asset. I saw it as a tool and started treating it as such. So I went to a design challenge for myself. I was working on average like 11-hour days before that, crazy times. And then I put myself through some experiments, got the help from coaches and mentors that I invested in, and actually cut that down to an average of 5-hour days quietly. And this is before we started using the terms quiet quitting and all that. And I don't even view it like that, Anya. I view it as I just became way more intelligent and efficient, and I really, really valued my time and energy because I knew what saying yes to every obsolete thing meant. The trade-off was I was more tired, I was more away, I was more absent, and I was less able to be with my family. And over time, I got better at that. And I realized that my time in corporate is going to end at some point because I've got this entrepreneurial spark inside of me. And I started surrounding myself with mentors. I started going to these entrepreneurial masterminds that I invested in to be around other people that were far outside my comfort zone, right? People that owned 1, 2, 3 businesses, like insane stuff, had 5 houses. And I was like, what? I felt like a complete imposter being in that room, right? But I was like, this is where I want to be. Something inside me says, you got to go this way, right? So that felt good. And then the pandemic hit. And that was my time to stop traveling, slow down, be like, okay, it's time to build something of your own. So I spent a couple of years building a coaching business, fiddling through what that should be, because that was my off ramp. My corporate off ramp was, how do I intelligently build something on the side, something that excites me, not just cash producing, but something that excites me to my core, because I'm missing that professionally. And it took a few iterations, but now where I landed is helping my past self. I know that person very well. I know how they think, feel, and operate. That person who is trapped in corporate hell, in the corporate cage, they need help to make it bearable, make it free, even while keeping their paycheck, and creating a new pathway where they could become entrepreneurial, where they could do something of their own design to enhance the life for themselves and their family. So that's the exact journey I've been on. So I created an entire program, set of content, and all of this, a whole mission to help that person, because I know there are hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people in that position. So that's who I'm helping now.
And I love that. If I could add, I found a point in my career where I was at Meta and I had all the things I should want, right? And it was the house and the family and things, but I was always stressed. And I knew there had to be a different way where you're not finishing the day to just be thinking, well, how can I get back to work? Or your kids come to you like, yes, but I need to go back to work. And that was a reflection point where I'm living right now so excited to retire in my 30s. Like so excited to retire. I'm spending every day working and thinking about work, and it's consuming me, and there has to be another way. To be fair, though, I also have people I know really well who are working really hard, not because they want to, they consciously want to limit it, but it seems like the work itself requires so much of them. And it's not easy to say like, no, because that's the responsibility. Could you let us know how you work with clients like that? If you can share, like what advice would you give to somebody who maybe is finding like, yes, I hear you, Matt. That sounds awesome. I want to limit the amount of hours. I want to lower the craziness, but reality is like, I'm not finding how to do that.
Well, the reality is, I think those people have not been creative enough yet, have not set a high enough bar for themselves. That's a starting point. The way I put it is, if you look back in your corporate history and you think back maybe to an executive or two that you really admired, and it wasn't because they were always available, sending emails at 11 p.m. It's honestly because they seem to be in control, Anya, right? They valued their time. They were hard to reach. They had large blocks of time blocked off for thinking, for being, for exercise, for family, because they know when they showed up in targeted manners at work, there was so much on the line for them to be high performing. They lived their lives so that they could be like an elite athlete during game time. They did all the right things for their mind and body and life so that they could perform well, rather than giving their entire life over to the game. Games don't last 24/7. The games are a concentrated period here and there and there. And I like to think about, if that person could do it, even if they're a few years older, a few years ahead of you, how could you put that same challenge to yourself to value your life, your health, your family enough to know that if I get that right, then I'm a higher performer at work. I'm more efficient, more concentrated, and I'm not like all the robots out there that are just always on Slack, always responding to emails, always saying yes to every invitation, leaving their calendars wide open for assault. You know what that does to you. Why tolerate it? Why not instill the bravery in yourself to engineer a better workplace experience for yourself, which in turn creates more value for your company and for your team? And you know what? People will respect you more because you've got this aura around you of someone who has self-respect, and it's a rarity, and someone that is harder to reach. That scarcity increases the honor people have for you. There's all sorts of psychological studies on this. Robert Greene talks about it in 48 Laws of Power. You increase your scarcity and you are more targeted in how you show up. Like, you just win in every way that way, and your team wins too.
Absolutely. And even if you are doing well, I think that mindfulness towards your time is very important. And if you haven't paid that attention already, because our brain thinks differently during different times of the day. So maybe your creativity is heightened at one point in the day versus your analytical thinking is heightened towards a different time of the day. And if you capture that and you're reflective and you analyze that, you will become even better because you will know at what time do you need to block off for a certain task versus another time you can have more time for those meetings, right? And I noticed on my own entrepreneurial time, nobody cares, or maybe somebody doesn't care. Your client doesn't care when they call you. But if you're giving them that time when you're most like analytically like able, then you're losing that capability for your other tasks, is what I found in my journey. Like that intention really makes a difference. Even if you're not working and like you're setting your own schedule, it could be of use.
Mm-hmm. And this goes so much more past the terms of productivity and time management. That seems a very tactical and superficial a way to think about it. Because most people would say, like, how do I get more out of a day? I think it's a silly question. It's like, how do I get more of the right few things out of my day? How do I apply essentialism to my life, not just work? For example, you brought up like circadian rhythms, knowing when your energy is at its best. You need to have this knowledge for your home life and your work life concurrently, whether you're in W-2 land or you're an entrepreneur or a hybrid of both. Now, if you ask yourself, I'm like, my brain is high octane, it's at its best from like 8 to 11 a.m. Just say that's a hypothetical. How do you engineer your schedule, whether you are at an employer or not, to maximize that time for yourself? So you do your best deep work, your creative time, whether it's writing a report for a client or whether it's building a part of your business. Whatever it is, know your rhythms, understand your energy levels, and apply it accordingly. And like, if you can take administrative meetings in the afternoon, do your best to engineer that. So that's the only slot. And you do these things, little system hacks, your life gets a lot better. You become more energetic, you become more focused, more present at home, there for your family, healthier person. But you've got to have the bravery to take this step.
I love that. And one quote that you have is, harness your uniqueness right where you are. Don't wait. Does that apply here, or could you elaborate? Where would you apply that?
I love this idea where we are all one of one, like an NFT, right? Where there's just one instance of it. There is no copying of that. And when we know that we're all unique, you start asking yourself, how am I using my uniqueness? Some people might call it zone of genius or different terms. But if you look at your job, what are you doing? You've got this responsibilities job sheet and you're doing all the things. You're checking boxes, doing a job. You're staffed on a project, you're executing this function, you're in marketing, you're in HR, you're in ops, whatever it is. And basically, you're doing what you're asked. You're not doing what you're unique at. And we've got these gifts trapped inside of us, and it's on us to unleash them, bring them to the world. And I deeply believe that's when we become our highest selves. That's when we get the most return. So in a very tangible sense, like say you're working at a place like a Meta or a large tech company, right? And there's a sea of other talented people. Operating like them, saying yes to what's asked of you doesn't actually differentiate you. And if your goal is, I need to get to a certain pay level because that's going to give me certain freedoms in life, like maybe I want to be able to invest in real estate properties because I get this much discretionary income. If that's your goal, cool. How are you going to do it? It's going to be done through your uniqueness. How do you understand it? How you go through the process of surfacing it, understanding your talents, your interests. What's that intersection where that all lines up and you're at your best, you're most excited, you're on fire? And then how do you find opportunities in a work environment to do those things at least 80% of the time and do everything else, to everything you can, to wipe away what's not that? How do you stay in that uniqueness and that unique ability and live there? And then, you'll learn a lot about yourself and you can start applying that in your home life. That, you love envisioning, say, a framework at work for everyone to use. Well, maybe you apply that in travel planning for your family, where you love setting the vision for what it could be, but you're not the micro detailed day-to-day planner, but you love doing that. And maybe your spouse can plug in and do the details, and you're learning to live in your zone of genius, your unique ability kind of everywhere. And then you apply that same understanding to entrepreneurship, which I'm a huge, huge believer in. I think it's the most brutal and effective way to understand who you are and maximize who you are. So, you make the time during your work days. Say it's like, I used to do like 6 a.m. to 8 a.m. every morning. That was my time to build my business. And I tried to just live in my zone of genius, live there, maximize my uniqueness, understand who I was, what I was capable of, and bring that to the world. And it's a continued evolution. Like I said, my whole business is helping people who I used to be, and just living in that zone. So that's what I say by focusing on your uniqueness, living there. It's where the most tangible and intangible gains come from.
I love that. And I think when I was in the corporate world and now having a little bit of reflection out of it, I realized that I was limiting myself a lot in a really subconscious way. So when you talk about following your uniqueness, that sounded right to me. Like, that sounds good. But I was feeling the need to compare myself to people who are on that next level or succeeding in the corporate world around me. And that was very limiting, honestly, to that uniqueness that I had inside me. And I think what I learned is that when you do pursue an entrepreneurial path, your limits become a lot bigger in the sense that you realize that you're not just your potential target audience or area of impact isn't just this team or this company, it's really the world. And that's so much bigger. And so I love this theme of entrepreneurship, even if you are where you are today, but you're like, hey, I feel like I can do more. You can do something even right now, even if it's just, like you said, start in the morning, spend that time, develop the idea. No matter how imperfect or perfect it is, you can start and develop it. And as you do that, I promise you, your perception of what your limits are going to diminish. And you're going to feel like there's so much more you can accomplish. And that uniqueness, which maybe you're like, well, I don't know. What's unique to me doesn't feel that cool. You will actually find ways to capitalize on that.
Yeah, indeed. I'm curious, Anya, when you were still in corporate and you had this itch that someday at some point you wanted to do your own thing,
Yeah.
what did it feel like? Like, what were you sensing in yourself that was like, I'm made for more?
Yeah. To be honest, it was just the sense of lack of fulfillment. And to be very transparent with you, is that economically, I felt like I have this beautiful house and a large mortgage. And just being the dork that I am, I was thinking, well, I could work my way very gradually towards a steady 4% increase that doesn't hugely account for inflation. But, and I'm putting so much stress into this and it's becoming my life. Or do I do something on my own where really I'm tapping into my full potential, my full strength, and the financial rewards are going to be mine for the making? So to be transparent, it was that sense of I could do more. I feel like I'm limited where I'm at, and where I'm at, somebody else gets to tell me what my top potential is and at what rate I can grow and what I should be doing to grow. And that's okay for the time being because I knew I wanted to come into the corporate world, learn a lot. And I got comfortable, right? The golden handcuffs were like, woof, there you are. But then there was a point where like I could do more now and I'm capable and I have more potential and I want to set my own terms. And then when the layoffs happened, that whole illusion that corporate is going to be safe also erase yourself. I think most entrepreneurs won't fire themselves. So there's a little more safety, I feel like, in actually developing that route, even if you are still in corporate, explore it.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me, right? You've got this pull towards something bigger that you want to impact, some tangible things you want in your life, and you feel this glass ceiling on your head, whether it's personal growth, whether it's your financial income, you feel these caps, and you're like, eventually you get to the point where you're no longer willing to tolerate those caps. And what I work with in my clients is that you got to convert your mindset to believing corporate is a tool. Like I even teach the strategies which is like there's two paths. You can choose the promotion path or the maintain path. Promotion requires a lot of work. It takes more out of you. It takes maybe double the work. The maintain path is a path where I say, I don't want promotion. I'm okay plateauing. I'm okay with this current exchange. As long as I hit my marks and I don't fall below and I don't piss people off, whatever it is, if I stay in that zone, it affords me so much space, time to experiment, to build something of my own, even if it's time to just be a healthier, better person at home for your family for 6 months. It could be like a paid sabbatical, right? You can continue the work, yet do the necessary, but just be better at home. Or you could go build something like a business. That's entirely possible too. Depends on your life season, what you need. If you've just had a kid, maybe you don't want to be building a business at the same time, right? Like I've actually experienced that. My last child was born. I was building this business and I have some regrets on how I was using my time, because I was in a demanding corporate job. I was trying to accelerate out of it by building a business. Our fourth child came into this world, and I still feel those pains, and I wish I'd used my time differently. But you've got to understand the life season you're in. At the core, though, just use corporate. Don't let it use you. That's the idea.
Absolutely. And we talk a lot right now about working and success. What do you think we should be working towards? If it's not just this never ending checkbox, if it's not the corporate ladder, what do you find worthy of pursuing?
Every day, better defining your version of success. I think the most valuable thing I do on a daily basis is in the pre-dawn hours, where I meditate for a bit, I read a little bit, I get my mind quiet, and then I journal about how I'm feeling, what I'm experiencing, and most importantly, what I want. My drivers for being. Like, if you ask me today, in the moment of this recording, the reason I do what I do from a professional sense is so that I can unshackle my family from the crippling bonds of the default path. I see them all plugged into it. My wife is currently a teacher. My oldest, she's halfway through high school at this point. She's got her eyes on college and checking those boxes. They're getting programmed. They're being conditioned in the same way that I was. And I understand why. I totally get it. And I feel that by role modeling what it's like to live a self-directed life, building a work situation and a life of my own design, as hard as that is on many days, role modeling for them is probably the most impactful thing I will ever do in my life, because the effects on their personal life, the joy they'll have, for my kids, the lives they'll be able to live because they saw me doing things differently, are profound. So I remind myself of that every single day. I connect to my wants. I keep basically redefining my version of success, sharpening it every morning, and then just take inspired action against it.
I love that. And to your point, I think that there's so much power in being that example into the world. And that's why I created this whole podcast, is because when you see other people doing something, whether it's your kids, your friends, people around you, podcasts, audience, it gives you a sense of, I can do something like that. And we talked about, like, it's even better when it's not somebody just like a celebrity that's done it for ages. Like, okay, well, that seems a little hard to grasp. But if it's somebody who you see their journey and you see the behind the scenes, and you feel like that's a relatable journey that you can follow, I think that it expands our potential. And so I appreciate you being on here and sharing your story so that other people can feel like maybe closer to the idea of what they're capable of. And the kids thing too, I think that's part of the inspiration for this as well. I have 3 boys, 1, 4, and 10. And I'm talking to my 10-year-old. He wants to be a research scientist and a YouTuber. I was like, okay, Oliver, let's make a Science of Oliver YouTube video and let's start plugging away, right? I want him to feel that there's more potential in his life. And I'm not the best stepmom. I'm going to be very honest with you. And I feel that sometimes, but we went on a camping trip the other week and we were sitting by the campfire and I was like, Oliver, I just want you to know you are capable of more than you think is possible. And you're going to define that. You're going to follow your own path, but you can do it. And it's not going to be easy. But if you learn and you explore and you try, like, you can do incredible things, something to that extent. And we were sitting by the campfire and with his dad, and he's like telling his dad, you married a good one. And again, I'm not the best stepmom, I got to tell you, but that made me tear up a little bit. And it just made me reflect about the impact that we're having on our kids with the work we're doing.
I applaud you. Stepmomming looks like the hardest job in this world. I see it firsthand every day too. That's an impactful message. That's something. Remember, like Maya Angelou said, the people remember how you made them feel, not what you said. Mm-hmm. That feeling will stick with him, and he'll have that inspiration guiding him for years and years and years.
Yeah, I love that. And getting back to you, as I'm sidetracking with my own conversation. So here we are, and now you're pursuing your entrepreneurial journey. I would love to hear what have been some of your key learnings, and maybe even to peel it back a little bit, what was the hardest thing of going and starting this whole journey? Because I think a lot of times people are like, I want to do more. I'd have no clue. And that feeling of it has to be something very tangible and precise stops so many people, including myself. until you get a kick in the butt and you're like, well, I have nothing to lose. So I'm going to figure it out along the way. What was your journey like, and what advice do you give to others who are in that I don't know where to start phase?
Well, first thing is I suggest go serving your past self. That is a great place to start, because that is a situation where you're uniquely positioned. You are expert. It's inarguable that you can serve your past self because you were that person. And to your point, when you are helping someone that's a few steps or years behind you, that's a very relatable situation. And it's not too daunting to say, I can go build a business around this, because it's pretty close. Someone who's a few steps behind you, you know how to go help that person. So you can start there. What's interesting is that my journey in entrepreneurship was that I felt it would be easier than it was. And you look around, there's so much inspiration on what it should look like. The podcast, the newsletter, the social media stuff. Check, 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 right? And and you feel like, I've got this. And then you start realizing that it is a lot harder to gain traction to connect with the people you want to serve than you realized. And then in turn, the results that you are hoping for, because you're looking at the 1% people online that are having great results. You say, I can do that too. And you realize the competition is fierce, because everyone, especially since COVID, wants to be a coach, creator, consultant. Okay. Wow. Competition is fierce now. Where it's landed me, and where, of course, it's just a daily evolution here, is to not think about competing at all. But yes, those are all tools. Like a podcast or is a great tool. It's a channel to connect with people. But I love this idea of personal category design. This is where I'm obsessed with recently. I got inspired from a group called the Category Pirates. And rather than thinking about the idea of personal brand, which some people would deem icky, it's like showing themselves off, endless context-free selfies, all these things, it's just like, instead of that, think about, you are creating a category, a little bit of digital real estate in this world that is of your own creation. And you say, here's what it looks like. Here's what I stand for. I'm sitting here. Here's what we do here. And if you jive exactly with this little space I've built, come on in, friends. Come on in. You come in here because you're experiencing these problems. You want this type of transformation in your world. It can be business. It can be spiritual. It can be health related. It can be whatever. But you create a personal category. You talk about that category as though it exists today. And in your mind, it's still the future, right? But you have to talk about it and make it so magnetic that people are drawn to you. And again, it's not about you. It's about you evangelizing a category, this little space of real estate that invites a small segment of the world into. And you invite them in, you give them confidence, they know, like, and trust you. And eventually you earn the right to serve them in a powerful manner. And I have lots of opinions on what that looks like, but that's what I love. It's been my greatest learning in entrepreneurship, is that I expected the hockey stick growth. Didn't happen the way I thought it would from a financial perspective, but the gains I've had in relationships, in knowing myself, in time management, knowing the person I should be, all those gains were tremendously worth it. And now I'm really getting my footing with, how do you actually convert this into a business that sustains in a big way and has exponential growth? And it took a few years to get there. And I'm thankful for the pain, thankful for that dip. I just don't know how you avoid it. As many shortcuts and hacks as you wish you could have, there's something very personal about this transformational journey. You have to know the darkness to understand the light. It's that contrast. Without it, you wouldn't appreciate everything you've been through.
It reminds me of the description of a diamond, right? It gets kind of, through hard work, it gets chiseled to look beautiful, and you have to go through that. And it reminds me of finding something that drives you enough to where, through the failures, through the challenges, you're still going to keep going. And what helped me, I don't know if this helps anybody, is to think about, like, if you had all the money, if you weren't just like, oh, high level imagine, but like really imagine if you had all the money in the world. At this point, it wasn't an object to you. You had all the things you wanted. You can go on all the vacations. Like, you didn't even have to work, right? What would you do with your life? And the first, it was like, oh, cool, that would be so fantastic. But if I really think about it deeply, it's actually scary because it confronts you with the limitations or things you have in your mind that aren't going to be solved with money. And that's a scary place to be. And then you think about, well, what would I want to do and make an impact in the world that makes me feel alive, that helps me find my purpose? And that could be a way to do it. That's what helped me. That's why I'm doing this work, because I find it meaningful. And maybe I'm not the best podcaster. I talk really fast, but I believe in this work and I believe in helping people find their own purpose and live a better, more fulfilling life. And so I'm going to do this. I'm going to connect. I'm going to learn to be better, make better videos, slow down when I talk, because even when I doubt myself, that purpose drives me. So I think it's finding that mission to where the long run isn't going to be like, oh, I'm going to give up, because like, no, this is worth it to me.
Totally is. And you'll find as you keep going, and just having made the move you did is a huge, huge victory in and of itself. But you inevitably become a different person in this process. And that's one of the greatest things, the forcing functions of entrepreneurship. Whether, again, you're keeping your day job or not, you can do it in both ways. It's a little harder with your day job, but I see it happen all the time. But you become someone different. You want things different. You say yes to different things. You say no to most things. And you just look back over a year, 2, 3 years, and you don't even recognize your past self anymore. And I think that is the most beautiful evolution any of us can ask for. So you just look back over a period of time. You can't even fathom being in that person's shoes, but you're so grateful that they had the bravery to try this journey that you're on.
Absolutely. And can we take a moment and celebrate the hard work that you have done? Because I know you helped over 100 people throughout their own journey in this process, which sounds incredible. Are there any specific success stories or just takeaways that you care to share? Because I'd love to hear those.
Man, I feel this. Here's an underlying position I didn't expect myself to be in, Anya, is I thought I was getting in the business of helping people at work for the most part. And then that in turn helps their lives. But I didn't realize that actually I'm in the business of saving lives. Here's what I mean. When I have enrollment calls with people on a weekly basis, right? People come in, we talk about if they'd be a good fit, how it could help them, what their needs are in their world. Like, there are some people on the edge of, I don't know if I'll be here next year if this doesn't get better. And it's like, whoa. Whether it's themselves not being here next year, their marriage falling apart, like very dire circumstances. And I didn't expect to be in that position. And I feel humbled and privileged to have the chance, the opportunity to help people see differently about what life could look like. This is an honor I never expected to have, never anything I thought I would sign up for. And I look at it as, as an entrepreneur, there are 2 types of problems you can solve. There are must solve problems like what I'm describing. And then there are nice to solve problems, which like someone can help you learn how to be a better copywriter, right? Nice to solve versus must solve. And the stakes are different. Like, there's great value and honor in doing either type, but you've got to know which game you're in. It takes a different type of person, a different mentality, a different level of commitment, a resolve. Like, I know I can't ever give up at this point. Like, this is too important. Seeing what I've seen, hearing what I've heard from people, the struggles they've gone through, and knowing that I am well enough positioned to help them, I refuse to let those people down, because lives are at stake, marriages, families are at stake, entire generations of that family are at stake if I am not helping people. And for me to sit quietly with capability and not do my best to reach them and help them, it's a disservice to all those people, and I can't live with that.
I'm so grateful you're doing this work. And I'm also really excited for more people to find out about you, or if they've been curious to hear this and have a sense if this is right for them. Also, I want to ask, did we miss any principles or strategies that are part of the Uncaged work that maybe we want to highlight? I know we talked a lot about some great things. Just want to make sure I create space for all of them.
There's a term I've been using recently, and I'm going to just test it with you here. I don't know if it's going to stick in a few months. It's the idea of corporate powered entrepreneurship. What
Hmm.
does that mean? Every word is intentional here. So you're in corporate, and corporate is just like a shorthand for a knowledge worker who's in a 9 to 5 environment, right? Could use different terms. Corporate means you're in a position right now, and I want you to leverage that. I want you to leverage that. Let it power an entrepreneurial life for you. An entrepreneurial life is one of your own design, where life and work are much more harmonious. They're blended under something you've created. It's not a construct that you're adopting from others. So you can imagine, like, here's how I'm spending my days, my weeks. It feels smooth. It feels elegant, exciting. I'm there with my family. I'm traveling. I'm making great money. I have great impact. You envision to that future. I believe entrepreneurship is your pathway to getting there for the reasons we've discussed so far. And I deeply believe that you can use your current positioning in corporate to power that. The skills you're building, the relationships you have, your successes, your accomplishments, you just have to learn to harness, package, embody those things, much like you are wearing your RightOffTrack t-shirt right now, right? You embody that and you unleash it outside of the 4 corporate walls. You unleash it externally. You become a much better person, much better personal life. You have great impact. You can make an uncapped living. I think entrepreneurship is the channel that most people need to explore somehow in their life. And I like to do it corporate powered entrepreneurship, leveraging what you have because there's so much there. Don't just run from that job. That job has extreme value. If you know what to do with it, do it on your terms. So that's what I'd leave with people is to harness corporate powered entrepreneurship. This is a little category that we talked about before. I like thinking of, here's a space. If you see yourself in it, you have a job that's pretty demanding, but you're a very highly talented person. You know you're meant for more professionally and you want to live a more freedom filled personal life. Come here. This is what we do here.
I love that. And I can tell that you put intention in everything you do, like that. Very sharp mind, always thinking, always improving, always learning. So I appreciate you sharing that. I like that concept. You know what it makes me think of? That this can also resonate with people who are starting their career journey. Because I can feel like it could be a little bit daunting saying, well, hey, I just graduated college and you're telling me now that what I am aspiring to do is not going to serve me. That sounds a little bit scary or uncomfortable. But if you are in a position where maybe you're not ready to change your whole path and everything you've known, I think there's still a really important takeaway about thinking about what you want out of life is a very important reflection. Like, what are actually your values? How do you want to live day to day? So you're not just going for like this goal framework where your mind is always chasing something in the future, but actually day to day, you're enjoying your life. Your priorities are met. But then remember that as you're working to keep that in line, but also look for opportunities to keep growing. And that means don't limit your network. Like, one thing that I really think is very powerful through this entrepreneurial thing is to keep embracing and learning from your network, whether it's mastermind classes, whether it's going on LinkedIn and finding people who inspire you in reaching out. And so again, coming back, if you're in the corporate world or you're just starting, you can be where you are today. And like Matt mentioned, mastermind your schedule, look for opportunities to keep learning, start creating something entrepreneurial. Again, it doesn't have to be the next AI app. It can be about like, here's what I know. Even just like start small. What do you know well? Maybe you juggle. Maybe you draw. Maybe you're a great tutor in the subject. Maybe you're great at Excel. Start sharing that. Just the practice of learning something yourself and sharing it for others will give you ideas of what you're good about. So just if you're like, I don't know where to start small and see where that takes you, even if you're not ready to go full on to a different path.
Totally, totally. And just to clarify, I am not at all a proponent of someone prematurely leaving corporate land. I think there's extreme value. I'm very thankful for what I built there. Like, I have this very great brain for thinking in frameworks now that I would have never built had I not spent 15 years in corporate. Okay. And even my daughter, who's eyeing towards college and a career path, and she's thinking way ahead. I even talked to her about the value of the exact management consulting journey I'd been on. And I'm like, in your 20s, that might be a beautiful place for you to be for all these reasons. The people you get to meet, the cities you get to experience, the type of work, the variety, like that is a beautiful place for you to be. And at some point, we all graduate from the places we used to be, and we have to be honest with ourselves. When is that moment? What does the next chapter need to look like? Because continuing on in your inner voice is screaming at you, saying, no more, no more. You have to pay attention to that too.
Absolutely. And I know I just started on the topic of network, and sometimes I balance that with the idea of like, I have to say no, right? So there can be such a thing as too many networking opportunities. But at the same time, as somebody who was laid off, one thing that I think people regret is like, I was at a company for a couple of years, let's say, and then all your network is within that company. So then you leave, and even if you're trying to go back somewhere, like you don't have that network really in new places. So could you talk a little bit about how you cultivate your network as an entrepreneur, or maybe somebody who is in a space where they're in a layoff or kind of intimidated by this whole networking prospect? Like, how do you cultivate that valuable, powerful network for whatever you're aspired to do?
You have to go external. You have to go out there in the world and shape it yourselves. If you accept defaults in life, you're only going to get default results. So here's what a lot of people do default wise. They let the world happen to them. They absorb themselves in news and endless social media feeds, and they are only spending time with the people in their immediate vicinity at work and at home. So those are the voices that are shaping their brain. And you're like, this actually, going back to mimetic desire, this programs in your mind what is success, what is possible, what is not possible. Instead, you got to be like, nope, I'm going to shape my own set of influences in my world. So I think one of the most powerful things you can do is, and I love social media for this point, is if you cultivate it and you tune it where you're getting the right feeds from people you deeply admire, like an array of people. For example, I follow people in like career coaching, in financial freedom, in various forms of entrepreneurship and personal development. I have a range of people, and this constantly upgrades and tweaks. Say it's like 20 to 25 people, and I look at their content, I add value to it, I comment on it, I'm engaging in it. When I engage in the content, I'm absorbing it, I'm nurturing it in my mind. I'm saying, this is what I want more of. And then you start saying no to all the default stuff in your world. You're not going to go to that networking event or that all hands because it seems mandatory. You could spend a couple more hours around these people learning what they're doing. That is the greatest education, is one of your own design. The world is ripe for it right now, whether it's social, whether it's YouTube, whether it's really good books quietly on your own. Like that level of self-education, by selecting the tutors, the mentors, the coaches you allow into your world rather than accepting defaults, which I'm guilty of in the past, that is one of your greatest accelerators. And then you don't have to come up with your path. Like, it's going to be influenced for you in healthy ways. You get all these ideas sparking to you, and it's going to pull you upward in ways you could never come up with on your own.
Absolutely. I agree with everything. I think where we put our time actually showcases what our values are in that moment. And I'm guilty of being on social media too much and doing things that don't align with my values. But when I reflect on that, it does make me slow down. Like, why am I spending so much time here when in fact, I want to be more present with my family and whatnot? And it may be uncomfortable if you listen to this and think, oh, where I'm spending my time actually does not align with my values. But it could be a good awakening call to think about, well, how can I spend my time more? And not just the time, but to Matt's point, what you internalize consciously or subconsciously is going to shape you. So if it's angry media, if it's angry news, if it's always worrisome and alert kind of media focus, like that's going to shape you in a certain way, versus if you're trying to learn and grow in content that focusing on that is being presented to you. And you mentioned a little bit earlier, if I can bring it back here, the competition element. Sometimes for me, the limiting idea was like, if I look at LinkedIn, somebody's doing something way ahead of me, like I don't even want to bother because it seems so far off. But when I stop looking at people as competition, it's like, there's a billion people in the world. There's so much money in the world. You create your own brand, your own design, your own little part of the world to where you're sharing your information in your own unique style. That will resonate with the right people. So really, Matt has his own podcast. I have my own podcast. We have a lot of similar values, but we do it very differently, as you can tell. And so there's really no point in competing. And if you embrace that mindset, it'll also be easier to embrace other people's learnings because you're not intimidated. There's no negative connotation to that. You're just open and receptive, that there's less ego involved in that.
Mm-hmm. One framework I learned, which I champion to everyone, is this idea called the gap and the gain. It's a book about it by Dan Sullivan and Ben Hardy. And the whole idea is that you can view your life in one of two ways, living in the gap or living in the gain. So imagine you're walking towards the horizon. The horizon is your goal. You see the sunlight. You keep walking and walking. Well, the gap is always going to be massive. You're never going to make progress. It's like your idea of success is always growing. You're never going to feel like you're making progress. That is living in the gap, right? I'm looking out there trying to reach it. Instead, look backwards. Look at how far you've come. Live in the gain. If I can look back and be like, oh my God, I started 60 miles ago. I can't even see the starting line anymore. That's living in the gain. And every day you say, like, I did a little more. I did this. That's why I live in my journal every day. I did this. I did this. It's stacking. James Clear would talk about it like 1% compounding again and again. These little atomic moves, these atomic habits build in ways this invisible progress happens that we can't see until, oh my gosh, then you see how far you've come and you're like, wow, I used to be in corporate 2 years ago. That was a really hard life. Now look where I am. I completely control my time. I'm changing and saving lives. I'm there for my family every night and weekend. That is night and day, night and day. That is a massive gain in my world. And I should be damn proud of that. So to your point, you've got to look at only competing against yourself, where you used to be. As long as you're stacking forward and you're proud of the direction you're going, that's what matters.
I love that, Matt. And I'm looking at the time. I'm keeping you almost towards your max. I would love to highlight your work, where people can reach you. And could you give us a little blurb about your podcast? Because I think it has so much great content and I want people to know all about it.
Yeah. So the podcast is the number one resource I would point people to. It's at Uncage Yourself is the name of it. You can find it at uncageyourself.fm, has all the links there. But it's the whole premise that you and I are talking about. You're in a difficult corporate environment. You're stuck. You want so much more for your life. This whole corporate powered entrepreneurship. I talk about that journey in many different ways: mindset, strategies, tactics, stories, guests. We come there and we dissect it and give you the inspiration you need to take this exact journey. So I point people there. If people want to find everything else, just go to matthewdoan.com for socials. And I spend most of my time on LinkedIn. But yeah, I put a lot of energy into these, whether it's audio, video. I find it's the best way to transfer inspiration and knowledge into another human's mind. So I really appreciate what you've created here, Anya, as this channel, this environment to help people transform from their version of hell to their version of heaven, right? You got to create the situation for them. So I love what you're doing. Get them right off track. Your mission resonates to my soul.
I love that. And do we have a moment for just 3 rapid fire questions to wrap up?
Please.
Okay, let's do it. First one. Ready? What motivates me the most is?
My family.
My favorite daily habit is?
Journaling.
Okay, and in the positive context, going off track is?
Joy.
Amazing. Thank you so much. This was so fun for me. I learned so much, and I just hope more people check you out on your podcast, on LinkedIn, everywhere you are available. Thank you for being just a good human being who responded to me right away as I'm starting out and just was willing to share your wisdom to help others. I really appreciate it today.
I love your mission. Thanks for having me, Anya.
Thank you. And thank you to all of our listeners for coming right off track with us. We look forward to having you here again.